Welcome back to this week's episode of the Campfire Chat Podcast. Today we're going to be going over the Caylee Anthony case, or I guess Caylee Anthony case. It's going to be a very interesting one, so stay tuned. Welcome back to the pod. This week's episode is going to be insane, actually. We're doing the Caylee Anthony case, or the Caylee Anthony case. Oh yeah. No, and it's also one of the cases where the verdict of the trial is extremely controversial. And I had heard a lot about this case. But until I started researching this week, I had my mind made up about it. But I feel like with these types of things, you have to kind of keep an open mind. And now I'm realizing that I don't really know what actually happened. There's so many theories, and I feel like so many people have their mind made up about this. And it's also presented a certain way in the media and even just of people telling the story on just like podcasts and stuff. I feel like sometimes the information is presented in a biased way. And I'm in no way saying that Caylee is not guilty. I just think that what happened is up for debate, and I think that it's not necessarily what everybody thinks. There's so many different theories that all totally make sense. So, I don't know, and I'm leaning towards a different direction of what actually happened because nobody knows exactly, but yeah, so stay tuned. Definitely, everybody listening. If you get to the end of the video, like, please comment down below what you think and just try to keep an open mind with this. Because, I mean, the facts speak for themselves, but there's a lot more than I even knew about. But, anyways, we gotta jump right in because this case, I have 7 full pages, like finely typed, more than any other case I've done. This took me way longer than any other case I've researched because you just start digging and there's more and more and more. There's so many factors. But anyways, yeah. Oh, and you could keep going with this too. Like, if I wanted to, I could probably make like a 10-hour podcast about this. But yeah, I know. Yeah, true. That one, but I'll reward us with McDonald's when we're done. But anyways, so Caylee Anthony was born March 19th, 1986 in Warren, Ohio. And her parents were named Cindy and George. And she has a brother named Lee who is 4 years older than her. So when she was young, the family moved to Orlando, Florida, which is where this case takes place. And so George worked as a police officer and Cindy worked as a home care nurse. When Caylee was a child, she had a pattern of both pathological lying and other lying. So I know, like, with pathological lying in kids, I've heard stories about people experiencing this, but it'll basically be lying about things that are so random and don't matter and don't make any sense. Yeah, and yeah, and that's the thing, like, it's it's different for a child who's just play pretending. Like, a lot of kids lie about random shit, but it's not necessarily them lying. It's just that they have an imagination still, and they can kind of tell you like, I'm a princess, and then it's like, well, they're not, but it's yeah, Well, I know like a coworker of mine told me that his brother, when he was a kid, they had to take him to a psychologist because he would just randomly be like, "Yeah, I ate dinner already." And they would be like, "What?" And he would like stick to it, and he had convinced himself that different things were the reality. So when he would be saying these things, he would get incredibly upset when people were like saying like, "No, you didn't. Like, what are you talking about?" Because he had no idea what was real or what was fake. But with Casey, it escalated to lying about much bigger things as she got older. But in high school, she started partying excessively, staying out all night, and becoming very distant from her parents. They had no idea who her friends were, what she was doing, who she was dating, and she was always dating someone new. She was always just doing things. It seemed like she kind of had a void she needed to fill, and she just needed so much gratification from others. And then around high school graduation, her parents started putting together a graduation party. But when they asked her for details about the ceremony and everything, she wouldn't give them information. Like she would just kind of brush it off. Um, so the day before the graduation ceremony, they called the school, and the school informed them that she had actually dropped out months before because she was failing classes. Yeah. I don't know. Like, yeah, I think so. And that's the thing is like she has a pattern of lying until she physically cannot lie anymore. Until it's right in front of them, and then finally she'll be like, "Oh, yeah, I lied about that," and just play it off. It's very strange. Um and so right after this, she started a job at the Hard Rock Cafe at Universal Studios. And then in January of 2005, Casey started dating Jesse Grund, and they were very in love. But about 2 months before they met, Casey got pregnant, and she didn't tell her parents until she was 7 months along. So that's, yeah, but I don't even know how you could hide that until you're set like 7 months. I don't think so. I feel like people usually do like 4 or 5, yeah. Unless she wore like, yeah, unless she wore like really baggy clothes. But she was like very thin, and I mean, she probably didn't gain too much weight. Yeah, until like the very end. But so she was planning to put the baby up for adoption, but when her parents did find out, they were outraged and they forbade her from putting her up for adoption. So, which is pretty messed up. I mean, obviously, she was not in a position to have a child, so she was, yeah. Yeah. And they did, like, help a lot with Caylee. So, yeah, so she eventually did not put the baby up for adoption. Her parents were, like, almost played a parent role. Like, they were doing the most for Caylee. Yeah. But so on August 9th, 2005, Caylee was born. But Casey never revealed the true identity of the father. She said it was Jesse's child, but remember, she got pregnant 2 months before they met, or at least before they started dating. I mean, you can never really trust anything she says, but yeah. But this was disproven by a DNA test, and that didn't really matter to him because he already treated Caylee like his own child. And he was a good guy. He didn't care. He still wanted to be in Caylee's life and be a father figure in her life. But then she told her mother once that it was her ex who passed away, but this was never confirmed. So nobody knows who the father is. Yeah. And then on New Year's Eve, like the year after Caylee was born in 2006, Jesse proposed to Casey. And because he just wanted them to be a family and, start going down that route. And then, yeah, yeah. But then, so in May of 2006, Jesse actually broke off the engagement though. And he said that Casey had been acting erratic and she was becoming a different person, which I think could potentially be from drugs. Like, she did love to party, so maybe she had just started doing certain things that were kind of affecting her as a person. But then after this breakup, Casey started partying way more and dating, and this is when she meets Tony Lazaro, who was an aspiring DJ. So he definitely helped with her love of the nightlife and everything. Yeah. So at this point, she was just going out every night to things, and she was bringing Caylee to Tony's. Yeah. She was bringing Caylee to Tony's apartment a lot that he had with his roommates. Um, which probably not the environment for the child because I know for a fact that they were doing drugs and partying there. Yeah. I think that's quite strange. But so yeah, Casey was still living with her parents and they played a huge role in raising Caylee, like I said. She financially supported them both. I guess the grandparents did. And they took care of Caylee most of the time. And so, just kind of a side note in this, but the Anthony. Yeah. She's definitely not a responsible person. Yeah. I just think they just don't really care. It's like, oh, somebody's there to. Yeah. Yeah. But, so the Anthony home had an above ground pool in the backyard, and Caylee loved to swim in it, but she was able to climb the pool ladder and get in on her own, which was dangerous because she couldn't get out on her own. So they always by a pool at all. Yeah. But so they always had to move the ladder when the pool wasn't being used cuz she would try to climb it on her own and go in the pool. So that was a huge family rule they had. Um well, I guess she was born in 2005, so she was like 3 at the time where yeah, definitely not. Definitely not. But so she did live with the parents until June 15th, 2008, when Casey got into a huge argument with her parents and ended up leaving with Caylee on a work trip in Tampa, Florida, which doesn't make sense because if she's working at like, I think Hard Rock Cafe is a bar, why would she have a work trip? I mean, it's possible, but that's not really. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, And that day, June 15th, 2008, was actually the last time Caylee was seen alive. Yeah. So, and this is where it gets seemingly obvious but confusing. So, she first head over to her boyfriend's apartment, but Caylee wasn't with her after leaving from this fight. So Caylee wasn't with her, she's at her boyfriend's house. Yeah. So, and then in the weeks after Casey left, her parents kept calling and asking to speak with Caylee, but Casey told them that she was with Zanny the nanny, whose full name was Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez. So, and you might wonder, how would she get the money for childcare? That's incredibly expensive. But apparently, one of her coworkers from Universal, it was his ex, and he decided to pay for her childcare, for her to watch both kids at once. His ex, yeah. He's paying his ex to take care of her and another person's child, which is weird because who's going to pay for your childcare? That's expensive. You're basically paying somebody minimum wage. Well, yeah. But um in the weeks after they left home, Casey was posting photos on MySpace of her partying, dancing on bar tops, participating in hot body contests pretty much every night. So it was every night she was posting different pictures at different clubs. At this point, she was in like her early 20s. Because she had Caylee when she was 19, so she would have been like 22 at this. Well, I don't know. I think she's just. Yeah. Well, we don't need more people being born into terrible situations. And clearly, Casey was not responsible enough to have a child. So, anyways, she got a tattoo at that time that said Bella Vita or Beautiful Life in Italian. And this was after the last time Caylee was seen alive. And so at the time she was staying with her boyfriend and ended up staying there for a month. And Casey's no, she did not. Cuz she you can't trust anything she says. She just constantly lies about everything. So it's basically when you want to find out anything about her life, you have to ask other people. You can't ask her because she's gonna make something up. But so Casey's parents let her use their car, and they basically just gave it to her so that she would be able to get to work and be more responsible, hopefully, figure her shit out. But then in early July, Casey went to a check cashing place, but she made it there empty on like fumes, like fully empty on her car. And then she cashed her check, but that was all the money she had. And getting towed to a gas station would cost her all of her money. So instead, she just abandoned the car there. Yeah. And so sometime later, the employees at the check cashing place realized the car was abandoned in their lot. So they called the tow truck and got the car removed. And then so on July 13th, 2008, George, who owned the car, was called by the tow yard to come pay and take the car. But when he went to pick up the car, he noticed a terrible scent in the car coming from the trunk. And there was a bag of garbage in the trunk, but it was a very different and distinct smell. And the worker said that it smelled like a dead body. But I mean, like, I've heard it's an incredibly distinct smell. A dead body. And garbage, Yeah. Mhm. Like probably different gases being released and stuff. Mhm. But yeah. But so in the garbage bag though was a ton of assorted trash, but there was also a rotting pizza in it that had maggots on the pizza, which is weird. Yeah, it was trash. Well, not in the garbage, but I also feel like all garbage has a distinct smell. Even it doesn't matter what's in a garbage bag, I feel like it always smells like garbage. Like you can tell cuz it's just like a bunch of assorted scents that are all kind of nasty. Yeah. So then George got home and he showed Cindy. So Cindy went to go find Casey, but so then she went to her boyfriend's house where she knew was the last place that Casey would have been. So Casey was there, but no Caylee. And she told her mother that Caylee was with Zanny the nanny. Well, I guess like she didn't say that she was just with the nanny for weeks. It was more like I think she was just saying that like she's with the nanny a lot of the time. So, but after arriving home to her parents' house, she eventually told her brother that Zanny had kidnapped Caylee and she was looking for her on her own for the last month. She was looking for her on her own. She didn't need police. And she said that like she'd been getting calls from Zanny. And she talked to Caylee, so she knew Caylee was okay. She was just searching for her. I You do something. You wouldn't be partying for sure. And that's the thing too. If she doesn't have the money to run a car, how is she going out like this? It's so irresponsible and crazy. Yeah, or if her boyfriend's a DJ or something. Yeah, or something. I don't know. I just found it strange. Um, Especially that she would even be able to do that to go out every single night. That's insane. Yeah, and get a tattoo. Bella Vita, beautiful life. That's the last thing you're thinking. Beautiful life when the worst thing is happening to you right now. You're gonna get a tattoo that says beautiful life. Like, that's insane. And it was like her first tattoo, like her only tattoo. Like, why would you just randomly get your first tattoo that says beautiful life at a time like this when your daughter's missing? It doesn't make sense. Like, if it was a heavily tattooed person, that wouldn't really be an important detail. Um, but she's not. So, why would she go out of her way to get that specific quote put on her? Strange. But, anyways, so Cindy overheard this conversation between Casey and Lee and she called the police. And she told them, "My daughter needs to get arrested for stealing my car and abandoning it. She was gone for a month and I just found her." So, but this was actually before she overheard Casey's conversation that she called. Yeah. And then she heard that well no, before she heard Casey saying that, she said, "It smells like there's been a dead body in the car." She specifically said that. And then, after she overheard this conversation, she called a second time to report that Caylee was kidnapped. So she then made Casey speak to police on the phone, which Casey kept being like, no, like, I don't want to. And then finally she was like, Casey, you have to. And so she said that Caylee had been missing for a month. Actually, she specifically said 31 days. And it was Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez had her. And she had been calling her from other phone numbers. No. And letting her speak to Caylee, and she'd been searching on her own. Zanny was a real person. Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez. She picked through a phone book, though. And Zenaida actually sued. Zenaida sued her for defamation. And I don't want to, like, jump ahead, but she kept this lie going about Zenaida for so long that they got Zenaida, the only person named Zenaida in this area from the phone book. They got a bunch of ladies, like, you know, when you do, like, the lineups, they took a picture of her in case he didn't recognize her. So they're like, okay, yeah, this is definitely a lie. And obviously they see Zenaida and they see that she's not doing this. Yeah. And she, like, they talked to her. She was a real lady. She was like, what the hell? But so after this conversation on the phone with the police, they took Casey in for questioning, and they found so many discrepancies in a signed statement, which is illegal. You can't lie to an investigator or a police officer. It's a misdemeanor offense, but it's still a punishable offense. So, but they didn't tell her that they knew this yet. So, and Casey told them that she worked at Universal Studios, like I was saying. And that's pretty easy to fact check where somebody works, right? So they found out right away that this was a full-on lie. She was unemployed. And they didn't tell her that they knew. But basically, she worked at, like, the Hard Rock Cafe at Universal Studios. But she had only worked there for a short period of time. She was unemployed for the rest of the time, but was lying to everybody, probably other than her boyfriend, that she worked at this place. I don't know how she kept that lie up, but I have no idea. It's just so strange. Yeah, it's so strange. But they put her on blast. They didn't tell her that they knew this. They took her to Universal Studios and asked her to take them to her boss. And she straight up took them around this office building. She was acting like she knew people, waving at them, saying hi, and these people were just looking at her like, what the fuck? Who is this woman? There is actually. Well, there's like security footage. She was acting like she worked there. She took them around the building in circles until she reached a dead end, and then she turned around and said, I don't work here. So she waited until the last possible minute. I don't even understand why you wouldn't just tell them, like, before you're gonna go there. Yeah. It just, like, it literally doesn't make any sense. What does she think is gonna happen? And then they would be like, I'm not your boss. What are you talking about? Yeah. Right after she admitted to them, I don't work here, they arrested her for child neglect and lying to an investigator. And then Yeah. Yeah, well, the whole thing is just absolutely insane. But yeah, so they arrested her, but this only lasted 8 days because on August 21st, Leonard Padilla, a bounty hunter and reality TV star, posted her $500,000 bail so that she could go home. And he was hoping that she would be able to help officers and himself find her. But after she got out, she didn't help at all. And Leonard publicly said that she is narcissistic and promiscuous. Yeah. Or something. Like, I don't know. But she was back in jail 8 days later for forging checks and identity theft. So basically, she was using her friend's checkbook without her permission and basically just stealing money from her that way. So after this, they just booked her and nobody got her out. I don't know. It was 13 times. She wrote 13 checks. Insane. I think she's just like literally so narcissistic that she just thinks that she can just get away with everything and everything's just gonna be fine. I don't know. It's so strange. But so this is where it starts to get a little bit crazy. So police seized the family computer and found searches on March 17th, 2008 for chloroform, which is, if you don't know, it's a chemical that can knock people out. Like you just sniff it and you're out. Um, and then another search for how to make chloroform on March 24th. And they also just got testing back from the trunk and found traces of chloroform in the trunk. So we can kind of see where she gets this, like, literally just honestly just being dumb from. Because police questioned Cindy, her mother, about this, and Cindy said that she had been trying to search for chlorophyll because her dogs had been eating bamboo in the backyard and she wanted to see if it was safe. But her work logs actually showed that she was clocked in at this time. And the searches before and after this were MySpace, which Cindy did not use, like right before and after, which is so stupid. Because why would you search up chlorophyll if you were trying to see if something's toxic to pets? You would just Google, is bamboo toxic to dogs? That's simple enough. Yeah, and it doesn't even make any sense. Because chlorophyll is like a small part of a plant. It's not the whole plant's made out of chlorophyll. And it's not like a toxic thing. You would just look up if bamboo is toxic, not a specific one chemical that's in bamboo. It's absolutely wild. Like, I don't know how she thought that that was just gonna fly. I mean, they didn't like catch her on that or like book her, even though she clearly just lied, but she can't prove that that's a lie. So, but they also found a search on June 15th, the day Caylee was last seen, for foolproof suffocation. And it was a suicide related website that was visited. And Cindy was questioned about saying on the call that it smelled like a dead body in the car, and she said that that was just a figure of speech, and that it was probably the rotting pizza in the garbage bag in the trunk, which also contained maggots. Yeah. And it's and you wouldn't say it smells like a dead body unless it smelled like a dead body. And it's literally garbage. So you would just say it smells like garbage in the car or it smells terrible. That's a very specific term to use when describing a smell. So, and even the guy at the tow yard said that it smelled like a dead body. So, this is just not adding up here. And so, on December 11th, 2008, a meter reader reported finding human bones, and he had reported it 3 times previously, but nothing was done, among months, and it was right by the Anthony's home. Yeah, and it was right by the Anthony home. Yeah, and they were in a laundry bag, all of the bones. But so this time, the fourth time he reported it, yeah, but the police finally went out and found them, and they DNA tested them, and they did come back to Caylee. But they found the remains in a laundry bag, and there was duct tape over the mouth of the skull, and they found a Winnie the Pooh blanket around the remains and a black heart-shaped sticker nearby. And so, at the Anthony family home, police searched and found a matching laundry bag in white. And the one on the scene was black, and they only came in pairs of one black and one white. And there was no black one at the home. And they found that Caylee had a Winnie the Pooh themed bedroom. So the Winnie the Pooh blanket makes sense. And they found the sticker set that the black sticker heart belonged to. Yeah. So, and these were clearly Caylee's remains in this. So you would think that's incriminating enough, right? And so in January of 2009, yeah, in January of 2009, so like not quite a full year after her disappearance, George was found in a hotel room trying to take his own life by overdosing on pills. He ended up taking like 70 pills, like Casey's dad, yeah. And he wrote a 5-page suicide note, but he was saved by police who came to find him on a wellness trek. And then, so in April 2009, prosecutors reversed their stance on the trial and were now going for the death penalty rather than life in prison because they thought they had enough evidence. It's really hard to get somebody the death penalty because people are far more wary, the juries are far more wary about saying somebody's guilty if they're going to put them to death. So it's just adds a lot of weight to the case. But they thought that they had enough information. But the thing about it, though, is that you need to build a solid case and explain exactly what happened. But in this case, they don't know what happened because they have all of these pieces that point to somebody in the Anthony home. Yeah. And they can't say that it was Casey because it could have been anybody in the Anthony home. It could have been anybody who had access to the Anthony home. So there's nothing specifically ruling everybody else out other than Casey. So it's so circumstantial, but still it seems very obvious that at least Casey did something. But they need to say, what did Casey do to Caylee? Yeah. I mean, clearly, but even that, yeah, failure to report a crime, but even that, it's like hard to prove because it's like, oh, she could have, been being taken care of someone else. Casey's not giving them any information. So they can't prove anything 100% other than somebody who did this, or at least who put the remains there, had access to the Anthony family home. Somebody searched these on the computer. Cindy's saying it was her. So they can't prove that that was Casey for sure. So that's the problem here. Like, it's just so circumstantial. But so then in April 2010, Casey pled guilty to the 13 counts of fraudulent check charges. But nothing else. But in 2010, also 2010, a fellow inmate told officials that Casey told her she used to knock out Caylee with sedatives to go out at night. Well, we'll get into the theories at the end, because there's several theories that make a lot of sense. So it's like, which one? But yeah. But so Casey hired Jose Baez to represent her as her attorney. And he's a big shot attorney. He's a slimy guy, and he actually worked with Harvey Weinstein after this. So, yeah. So he will do anything. Yeah. He plays dirty. And finding a jury for this trial was so difficult because normally they find people who don't know about the case. But for this, they had to just find people who were indifferent about it because everybody knew. Yeah, everybody knew about it. They had to fly people in, and I forget the name for it. I think it's like Cirquender or something. But basically, they had them staying in a hotel without any contact from the outside world. They couldn't watch the TV, couldn't do anything. I think it just really depends on the trial that they can choose to do that. Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. But this was kind of a problem because for people to not have their mind made up about it and be indifferent was almost like they thought she wasn't guilty. Because it's like, if they were on the fence about it, there's so much evidence pointing to her if they're watching the media that if they're going to say, oh, I don't know if she's guilty, they're probably. Yeah. So there's people who don't know. Yeah. So it was a tough crowd, you could say. But so the prosecution focused on the Google searches and Casey's behavior after the disappearance, and it was mainly circumstantial evidence, which was a huge mistake. That's not good because when you're in a trial, yeah. And how it Yeah, and how it works too in the US legal system is guilty without a reasonable doubt. So all the defense has to prove is that there's a reasonable doubt, even if they think, yeah, she did this. If there's a doubt at all, like, but it could have been somebody else, then she's not guilty, which is kind of messed up, but it does kind of make sense even though it's an extremely flawed system. Um, but that's, I guess, just the rights and liberties of the U.S. But so they alleged that Casey knocked Caylee out with chloroform and duct taped her airways shut to kill her. So they were claiming, yeah, and like over her, because they found it on the skeleton too, because they found duct tape. And so they were going for first degree murder, um, which I don't know. It's a theory that I kind of believe because of her actions afterwards. She didn't seem upset about it. It seemed like it was almost the life she wanted to live. And she's clearly a narcissist and has all these issues that it's like, I think that's a possibility that it was first degree murder and she did really actually want to knock Caylee out with chloroform and duct taped her airways shut to kill her, especially since she was looking up chloroform and strangulation. And they focused on that a lot, the Google searches. But they were, yeah, they can just go to the search history of the computer. That's what they did. Yeah. But they were unable to say exactly what happened or the timeline of events or paint a clear picture. Yeah. Yeah. And the defense team took the stance that Caylee drowned in the pool because George forgot to move the ladder out of the pool and Casey was not watching her. So he covered up the crime for both of them to not get in trouble for child neglect, which also is a plausible theory because, and I mean, I'd, that's weird too, but also why would, like, if it was child neglect, you're taking a huge risk covering this up because now it looks like a murder. And they're making it look like a murder when actually if this happened and it was this crazy accident, they would not get punished as badly as if this is going on, obviously. If they would have just called the police and reported this, yes, that's neglect, but it's much less of a charge than murder, so why would you cover it up? Well, that's what people think, because also when you hear him talk, he sounds so convincing about his points, but some of them is like just so debatable that you're not really sure. I don't know. The whole thing is strange, and we'll have to get into that theory because I do have some more for that, but I'll save that until the end because I actually have the phone records for that whole day, which you can piece stuff together with that. But but during the trial, the defense team alleged that both George and Casey's brother Lee had been molesting her since she was 8 years old, and this was the reason for her odd behavior and lying. And they admitted her lies, like Zanny the nanny and all that. But George denied all of this on the stand about the pool, about the molestation. He was so upset because, like, and I never want to say like, oh yes, this person was lying about this terrible thing happening to them. But she lies about everything. So I feel like it gives it, yeah, and like why she's lying. Yeah. Yeah, and also like to explain her behavior and why she's like kind of fucked in the head, that she's just been molested and that taught her to lie from a young age. So I don't really believe her on that. I mean, I think it's possible that she was molested, but I you can't fully believe anything she says. So I'm just gonna assume that she probably wasn't, because almost everything she says is a lie. So it's like, yeah, it doesn't change much. Yeah, yeah, and like I don't know, because people have different stances on George. They think maybe he did cover up this, but he seems like a nice, reasonable guy when you watch these interviews. But so does Casey. She seems like a nice, normal person. So it's always the worst people seem the best because they're so good at putting on an act from all this. Yeah. Like so many serial killers. That's kind of messed up what's going on right now with that. Is like all these girls fangirling over Jeffrey Dahmer. And I get it. Yeah. Ted Bundy. He was Ted Bundy. It's weird. Why do they pick attractive men for these roles? I don't know. It's pretty weird. I think he was ugly. We were actually was talking about that with my friends recently. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, a little sidetracked here. But can you not hear me? Yeah. Okay. But so the defense also questioned why they jumped right on Casey without really considering anything else. And they were saying they should have investigated even the meter man who found the body. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, well, like everything pieces together. And it's also, yeah, I think she is just totally in denial about this as well. Because it doesn't even make sense what she's saying at all. I think it's like, you know, what do you mean? This way? Okay. But, but that's the problem that it was just bones. Because that's all they had. Because you can't determine the cause of death through bones. Most of the time. Sometimes you can. Months. But, yeah. Because the guy had reported these. What? This was Orlando, Florida. Well, it was in the forest. But, because he went to pee. Because what happened was he was checking. Well, no, so it wasn't even that far into the forest, though. It was like close to the side of the road, but basically he was just going. There was like backyards almost, like really close. So he was checking people's meters, and then he would have to pee. No. Yeah. 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 So but yeah, he was just tracking people's like water meters out their house and stuff like that. And then he just went out to the forest to pee. But he had been reporting it. I think the first time he reported it was in like September. So a couple months later. And obviously it's in Florida in the summer in the heat. And it was partially in water too. So it decomposed very quickly. But he reported it amongst months and it took them this long to find it, so it's fully decomposed. I know, right? Well, I guess they got bigger fish to fry. Well, not really, but there's a lot of shit going on in Florida. Did you ever look up your Florida man, like a Google search for your birthday? Mine was, for my birthday, or like my date of birth. It was Florida man tries to pay for pizza with weed, which I feel like is fitting. I would probably tip someone with weed. Yeah, so that's why he got arrested. Yeah. We didn't try to tip him. He tried to pay for it with weed. I think I did. No. That's lit. Yeah. Talk about lit. Yeah, they got shit to do. But anyways, so um the defense only was trying to cast doubt. They were not trying to say that Casey was innocent at all. But if they cast doubt, she would get a not guilty verdict, and so she would be considered innocent and be able to live out her life normally. So, a neighbor who testified for the prosecution, though, testified that Casey and her boyfriend borrowed a shovel from him in June to dig up a bamboo root, which also sounds kind of sketchy. And that's the thing, too, about where the remains were found. They were found in water, but since it had been flooded in Florida, it could have been buried before, and then the water kind of went through it and covered it. Yeah. So, and they also showed that one of Caylee's hairs was in the trunk with a decomposition band, basically proving that she was in the car dead, but that didn't necessarily prove that Casey did it still. So, because when somebody dies and they decompose, yeah, but it's just disproving the prosecution's theory, which their theory, I don't think is that strong, because they don't know what happened. Like, I don't think there's necessarily a way to prove without a doubt that it was first degree murder. She purposely gave her chloroform and blocked her airways. You can't. And they went for such an intense case of this. If they would have maybe toned it down, did not the death penalty but life in prison, and did some sort of neglect charge, which there is neglect charges that can get you a very long sentence, even life in prison, and used a different theory, then probably. Yeah. And so, and when there's a body decomposing and there's a hair attached to it, you get like a black band on the root of the hair. So they found a Caylee's hair that was definitely hers, because it was not the color of Casey's hair, but it was untreated. So Cindy's hair was treated, like dyed. So it was definitely hers. Um, yeah, so it would have been one of the three of them, is what the DNA test came back with, but it had to be Caylee's. But still, could have been anyone who had access to the car, which was the whole family. So George also had access to the car, and they were trying to pin it on him. So, and that makes sense. Like, they were being kind of smart. They were being slimy about it, but the defense was being smart about this. And Cindy maintained during the trial that the searches were for chlorophyll, not chloroform. I don't know how they didn't poke holes in that so easily, because clearly that's not what happened, especially since it looked up how to make chloroform like a week later. So yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And but on July 5th, the jury found Casey not guilty of first degree murder, aggravated manslaughter, and aggravated child abuse. And the reason that they cited was too much circumstantial evidence. But she did get 4 misdemeanor charges for giving false information to police officers, and the charges were for 4 years in jail. But since she already had 3 years in jail with good behavior, she was credited and got an extra credit for good behavior, so she got to go home after, I think, 10 more days. But she also owed $200,000 to law enforcement. Yeah, and just lying and all the resources they put into this. And most people in the public and media were so outraged by this, People were freaking the fuck out, losing their mind over this, because so they were only told what the media told them, which was very much on the side of the prosecution. And I'm not saying that anyone should think that Caylee is not guilty in this. But what I'm saying is that the prosecution did not have a strong case. So they were believing everything that the prosecution was putting out there, which I think was kind of the problem here. And the jurors' names were eventually released, and they got many death threats and everything for letting this happen. It was terrible. But yeah, and like it only took 11 hours of deliberation to come to that conclusion. But it usually takes a lot more to decide what sentence they're going to give. But the trial was in motion for like a little bit over a month. So these people were desperate. Like they wanted to get out of there because of their situation. But let's go through the theories and the evidence that supports those theories. So the first theory that I think is pretty plausible is that Casey may have drugged her to go out and Caylee overdosed accidentally, so Casey panicked. So George later said that Caylee was overall healthy, but a lot of times he saw dark circles under her eyes and she would sleep for like 12 to 16 hours. Also, Zanny the nanny, people call Xanax Xannies. That's a thing. So maybe she made that up because maybe she had called Xanax, Zanny the nanny, to some people, so she wanted to kind of be consistent and be like, oh no, it's actually the nanny, but actually she was just giving her Xanax to kind of knock her out. Yeah. So, and then obviously the inmate also said that Casey admitted to drugging her, which is not always like, you can't always believe that, because people say all sorts of things in jail. You don't know if it's true. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that might be one of the most plausible theories. That's weird. But also the duct tape could have moved because like it was over the mouth of the skeleton. It could have been on something else and like somehow shifted there. It's possible. But I kind of feel like the defense was onto something in a way, because the theory that Casey wasn't watching Caylee and she went in the pool and drowned and then possibly George covered it up makes a lot of sense. And yeah. So I'll read you the phone records from the house and from like the internet searches too, and Casey's own cell phone records, because this can paint a bit of a picture here. So at 7 a.m., Cindy left to go to work. At 7:45, a call was made from the house to Casey's phone, and it looked like she was just trying to find her phone. So at 7:52, she was on MySpace and looking for clubbing outfits online. And she was kind of on MySpace like the whole day and just messaging people. And it seemed like, and Caylee was there, so it seemed like Caylee was maybe just playing on her own because she was on MySpace all day. So probably just not really watching her that well. At 1:44 p.m., Casey called her friend Amy and they talked for about 45 minutes. At 2:30, George said he left to go to work. At 2:51, the Google search was made for foolproof suffocation, and then the suicide website was clicked. Then there was more activity on MySpace. And then at 2:52, Jesse Grund, her ex-fiance, called Casey, and he said that she sounded frantic and told him that her parents were divorcing and she needed to find somewhere else to stay. At 3:04, Casey picked up a call from George, and the call only lasted 26 seconds. At 3:34, Casey called her boyfriend. At 4:10, Casey called her mom at work, but no answer. And then around this time, Casey then left the house, but on her cell phone, she tried to call her mom like 10 times before 6:30. At 7:54, Casey and her boyfriend were seen casually walking around a video store, like a Blockbuster. So the theory goes that would line up with this is that they were just kind of chilling, having a lazy day in the morning. Casey and Caylee. Casey was just on MySpace and stuff. Caylee was playing on her own, but maybe occasionally checking on her and stuff. And then Casey maybe picked up the phone with Amy, and she was not paying attention to Caylee at all during this time. So she went out. The ladder was still in the pool. She got in the pool and drowned. So Casey eventually found her, and she told George. He suggested that they cover it up to not face child neglect charges. Casey freaked out and looked up suffocation to kill herself. George took the body and hid it in the forest, and that's why he maybe called her and was like, I took care of it for 26 seconds. She was panicking so hard, and that's why she sounded frantic on the phone with Jesse, but maybe he calmed her down a little bit and she decided not to kill herself. She freaked out and called her mom a lot, and then just decided not to tell her mom and cover it up only between her and George. And then Cindy got home later to an empty house. I think it... Yeah. Yeah. So it makes so much sense. And a lot of people, most people, probably a lot of people watching this are going to be like, you're fucked for believing that. But it still means that Casey's guilty of this. It just means that the prosecution got it wrong. And on the prosecution team and the police, they fucked up. Like, the police made so many mistakes and just didn't do their diligence with this. But anyways, the third theory, which I think is honestly the least plausible theory, is that Casey wanted to be free of the responsibilities, so she decided to drug her with chloroform, block her airways with duct tape, and hide the body. So, I don't know if I want to say the least plausible, because she was looking up the chloroform. Yeah. 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 I just... Yeah. And I mean, like... And the facts that line up to that is that that's probably the least like personal or painful way to kill somebody. Like, if she just wanted her gone but didn't want to like actually go through killing her, you would think that doing that, you could literally just do it, put the duct tape over, leave, and they would die, and you wouldn't have to deal with that. But and like, she's clearly a psycho or a narcissist or something, because her pattern of lying and especially her behavior after is weird. It's weird that she was clubbing after and getting a beautiful life tattoo and all of this. Her behavior was so strange, and it doesn't line up with either of the things, which would mean that she would maybe have some empathy about this, or at least be upset if this was an accident, and she would clearly be feeling so guilty. And so clearly she, no matter what happened, she has no empathy. She's clearly a narcissist. And, you know, the Google searches for chloroform would prove this, and the suffocation, because she probably suffocated with the duct tape. So the Google searches would completely line up to this, because maybe in the day, it was like they had a fight and Casey had to go somewhere else, and she was like, well, what am I going to do with Caylee? This is like, how am I going to get childcare? I've lied about this childcare. How am I going to support her and myself? Like, I've lied about all of this. I'll just go live with my boyfriend and everything will be fine. I'll just kill her and fucking go on with my life. It makes sense, because also the suffocation case. Yeah. She just thinks it's going to be fine. And so it makes sense. So if you piece that together with the Google searches, that makes sense. And with her behavior, it makes sense. But that's so circumstantial. And so I really don't know. What do you think makes the most sense? In the pool thing? Yeah. Because, I mean, when we look at this phone log. Yeah. I just. But I honestly feel like about that stuff, she must have lied on the spot about it. Because maybe she didn't know and she was so in denial that she was like, okay, I'm just going to take the blame for this, whatever. Because if you thought that through at all, you know what she said doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, she could say she was searching for something else. Like, there's so many times that I've been Googling something and clicked on something completely different, and I'm like, what the fuck? Why is this on my Google now? But the way that she explained it as she was looking up chlorophyll for the dogs and everything doesn't make sense. So I feel like she probably made that up on the spot, so maybe she didn't know. Yeah, I just. But that's the thing, like, you can't really retrial this kind of thing. But I'm just. This is like. This whole thing has mind fucked me. Because before I started researching this, I thought it was like. The other theories were bogus and it was just definitely a first degree murder. Because that's what had been presented to me. But now that I have this other information, like, I don't know which sounds the most plausible. Because, Caylee accidentally overdosed, so Casey panicked. That sounded like something she probably would do, realistically. Because, that's a common thing, people drugging their kids, which is really fucked up. But I've heard so many times of parents, like, giving their kids Benadryl or even, like, alcohol to calm them down so that they can go do something. So, like, Casey is probably the kind of person who would do that. So that makes sense. And she just panicked. And that's what George says. If you want to believe that George is credible, that's what he thinks happened. And, everything with that, it makes sense. The pool thing with the phone records and everything, that pieces together, like, and we don't know what was said on any of these calls or anything like that. So obviously we don't know. But it makes sense. But also the phone records could have gone with the other theories too. Or maybe instead of she went out to the pool on her watch, maybe she gave her some Xanax on her watch because she didn't want to watch her all day. And that's when she overdosed and stuff. And then the rest of that would make sense too. But I don't know. I do feel like maybe the prosecution side is the least plausible. Because also, her parents took care of Caylee, so I feel like Casey probably could have just left Caylee with them. So it's not like she even had that much responsibility with Caylee. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she still was partying and doing whatever she wanted. So it wasn't even like Caylee was that much of an obstacle in that. I don't know. But I think, yeah. But I don't know. I think that the jury made the right call. Not that she's not guilty. I think 100% she's guilty. Yeah. I don't think so. I think that they could have charged her with the child neglect charges that they also put forward because they put through several charges. They did let me see. Aggravated child abuse, aggravated manslaughter, which maybe not aggravated. Maybe it was just manslaughter and child abuse. But regardless, she's definitely has something to do with this. But that's just the legal system. You can't just say, yeah, she has something to do with this, as the jury will just give her life in prison. Because that's just not how it works. So now Cindy and George are still together, but they have different theories of what happened, which is kind of strange that they're still able to stay together through that. Yeah, that seems like a irreconcilable difference. I don't know. I don't see how they could just be okay with that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. But so Casey lives in a house in Florida with one of the investigators in her own case, and she works with the investigator as a private investigator now. But she basically lives in hiding, and she just lives with this man that she works with. Well, and it's weird. She was caught having sex with Jose Baez during the trial as payment. Like, basically, it's confirmed that she was prostituting herself for Jose Baez to represent her. And weird relationships with, like, other investigators. The whole thing is weird. She was, like, I don't know. She was just found by random people naked in his office. Yeah. Um, but yeah, she gave with this random man. She's a private investigator now. That's her job. I don't know. And I don't know how she can even do that because she doesn't even leave the house. So how would she investigate things? Yeah, or she just gets paid by this man. I don't know. It's strange. And she lives with him. I don't know what the fuck's going on there. But she gave interviews in 2017, but she still maintains that she doesn't know how Caylee died. And the Associated Press actually described the interviews as revealing, bizarre, contradictory, and ultimately raised more questions than answers. Because she's just like, I don't know. I don't know why she even did that. She said in the interview, she's like, I don't know what happened to Caylee. And it's like, girl, you could just say something. Yeah, she knows what happened 100%. And she said if Caylee was, yeah, and Caylee like would have been 12 at the time. So she said, oh, if Caylee was still alive, she'd be a badass and probably listen to hard rock. It's like, girl, what the fuck? It was just so strange. It was the weirdest interviews. And now I think she's actually coming out with a documentary. Giving her a platform to fucking lie. Unless they're gonna just, like, contradict all of her lies during the whole thing. Because that's... Yeah. And that's the problem. Every time she gets interviewed, every single time, she contradicts herself. So she's not even keeping track of her lies. She's saying all sorts of shit that contradicts... So it doesn't make any sense to talk to her. Yeah, what is she doing? Just, like, accept that you got lucky and you're free. Just, like, live your life in fucking Florida. Do your thing at this random man's house. I don't fucking know. It's so weird. And, like, but I do want to see what her life is like now. And just see, like, what a shitty person she is and what the fuck is going on with this random man. I don't know. But, anyways. Well, they fucked it up. Yeah. But ultimately, I just think they should have investigated it more. They should have gathered more evidence. They should have dug deeper in this. They fucked it up. And I think that's sad, but I think that that's how the legal system works. Yeah. I don't even think that this is the jury's fault. I don't think that the jury made the wrong call. I think there was reasonable doubt. That's their job. Their job is, if there's reasonable doubt, not guilty. There was reasonable doubt of their story. Yeah. So they did their job properly. It was the prosecution and the police really fucked up. So that's the conclusion. I don't know what happened. I don't think it's what they're saying. I don't think that it's the duct tape thing, the chloroform. It might have been. It makes some sense, but I don't know. I'm really just left with more questions than answers with this case. But I think that that's better than having a false stance on it and having false information, because that's what I always thought. Yeah. That's like, I wish I could have a conclusion. Yeah. I wish. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Like, I wish I could end this podcast being like, I think this is what happened. This makes the most sense. I don't know. But I think that's better than me coming out here and just presenting that one side and then saying, yeah, the jury fucked it up. It's definitely these things. Like, I'm happy that I deep dived it, but it's like, holy shit, what the fuck happened here? I have no idea. Either way, I don't know which sounds the best. Which theory? Yeah. But that's the strange part, is how many people. Yeah. Because people, probably most people who know somewhat of this case or have followed it in some way and maybe just not like dug into it that deep, they will, they have a certain assumption and it's like, yeah, that's set in stone. She definitely did this. But it's just not that simple. And I feel like a lot of times people just want to point a finger and have some sort of closure in their mind. And you can just make that decision. Yeah. 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 And please comment down below what you think. But like, just with your, yeah, I just want to hear like anyone's opinion. Yeah. But like, please, because I just want to hear like after hearing all this information, can anybody, like, is anybody out there able to like distinguish what makes the most sense? Because I'm struggling. I don't know. Yeah. Unless Casey does. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And I think yeah, I'm gonna go order a quarter pounder. Peace. Yes, drive safe. Bye.